Having real mentors is really important. It didn't exist when I started my business. And the business women that I was looking up to are the Jo Malones of this world, who had the most phenomenal businesses. But they also probably had an army of staff behind them, kind of helping them on that journey. I had nothing and nobody. And I think it's really important for women and men out there starting businesses, whether you're kind of in your younger years or older, to have people that have done it before, that have done it from nothing, and that have really been able or can relate to you, or you can relate to them, and the challenges that they've had. You know, it's a really lonely world, it's a challenging world, and at times it's not a very nice one. You know, you generally don't ever switch off. There's always that sense of responsibility, as well as all the amazing other sides of it that a business brings. But actually, particularly for a working mum, there are some really bleak, pretty dark times that I just hope that being able to do these mentoring and having these conversations can really, I guess, allow people to realise that it can be done.
Abi, welcome to the podcast.
Nice to be here.
It'd be great to just tell us a little bit about SpaBreaks.com if possible.
Yeah, so SpaBreaks.com is an award-winning spa break booking website. Essentially, we work with over 550 hotels and spas in the UK and Northern Ireland. We send over 16,000 people to spas every week, and we've been around for nearly 20 years now. We are known, I guess, as innovators, and we have tried really hard from my founding days to break down barriers within the spa and wellness industry and really, I guess, make it more accessible to groups of people that I felt were really marginalised within the kind of the spa and wellness world. So people with cancer, people with disabilities, etc. So all round just a fabulous website, and I'm very lucky to have the most incredible team.
Amazing. And you mentioned it started almost 20 years ago.
Yes.
How was that first year?
So back in 2008, it was terrifying. I had a 6-week-old baby. I had no idea about business. I've never really studied business. I didn't do particularly well at school. My parents weren't from a business world, and therefore it was a complete and utter kind of learning curve for me from the minute I started it. It was incredibly exciting at the same time. And I think what I learned in those early days is that you've just got to be really brave sometimes. And if you have an idea that you truly believe in, you just got to keep going. I think for the first 6 months, I employed 2 students that were doing a business degree. They needed a year in business and experience. So we took them on. It was just them and myself, and we turned over $250,000 in the first 6 months. So it became very clear very quickly that we'd hit on something. Yeah, so it was we're working with 26 spas at the time, and it just flew, both from a gift voucher and an online booking point of view. So it seemed to be a bit of a light bulb moment where I just thought, actually, you know what, this is pretty good.
Wow. And before you took the leap into the idea, how did you identify the opportunity?
So I worked, I trained as a journalist, didn't really enjoy it very much, realised very quickly that I didn't want to be interviewing people about really depressing stories. So I decided to take my kind of creative PR, relationship type skills and put it into the hospitality industry, into marketing. Mm-hmm. So I was a sales and marketing director, working with the sales and marketing director for a chain of hotels called the Peter Michael Collection in Newbury. So it's Donington Valley Hotel, the Vineyard at Stockcross. And I was working as a sales and marketing manager, essentially managing the third-party relationships that existed at the time for hotels, spas. At the time, there were only 2, lastminute.com and a company called SpaBreak Direct. And I just, while I was in the spa, we built a new spa. And I guess at that point in time, and this was 25 years ago, I guess I foresaw what essentially is now our spa and wellbeing kind of industry and business, and realised that I wanted to do something that was a bit more community driven, was a bit more, I guess, ethical driven around, like I said, really encouraging these groups of people into the spas that I was just not seeing when I was working in the hotel. And so I left the hotel and then started my own PR agency for a couple of years just so that I could kind of interview and have case studies from all the other different hotels and spas, just so that I could really get a feel for what the business needed to be moving forward for it to work. So that couple of years allowed me to really infiltrate and get under the skin of general managers and really understand what kind of business model I needed to set up that was going to be successful then moving forward. So that's essentially kind of where the idea began.
So had you already formed the idea prior to doing the PR? You
Yes.
had. So was that a move to just get the experience, or?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I really wanted to kind of, because I'd only had experience of one hotel and spa, and thought actually that wasn't enough to build a whole business case on. So at that point thought, right, how am I going to get access to other people that I can kind of interview and get ideas from while also earning a living? So started PR agency, did PR and kind of media for a number of local hotels and spas, and really kind of got a feel for the fact that there's always internal conflict with any third party, because obviously the general manager of the hotel really wants to drive that business direct, whereas the third parties have to take a commission of anything they sell. So being internal, I saw this conflict on a daily basis when I was at Donington and the Vineyard. So I knew that I needed to set up a business that was complementary to what the hotels were doing directly. And that enabled me really to understand and kind of unlock the key hooks of what it was. It wasn't about discounts. It was driving volume on the days that they needed it, so that actually we were complementing their direct selling strategy rather than compromising it. So at the same time, the likes of Groupon and Woucher were also kind of launching. So I was up against this kind of mob deal mentality that existed, but I knew that I didn't necessarily want to go down that route, because I was never going to be able to compete with those kind of size of businesses plus the booking.coms, etc. So I needed to create something that was quite unique and had a place, I guess, outside of that world. So
Interesting. Groupon, which is coincidentally I worked at for a year as well, so don't judge me too hard.
Yeah.
So would you recommend for other founders that have an idea and maybe identify an opportunity in a market that is it essential or advantageous to get that experience in the industry prior to launching?
Definitely advantageous. I think for me, as I said, I had no business experience whatsoever. So it would have been, I think, really difficult for me to have gone into that without, I mean, my PR agency was teeny tiny, but it enabled me to get a very basic understanding of keeping your own books, invoicing, making sure that your cash flow is all good, understanding, tax, understanding all those kind of small intricacies that, although at that point in time were tiny compared to what we do now, actually it proved a really good foundation for me as somebody with no experience. I was also very lucky because when I was at Donington Valley, I met what essentially became my two, I guess you could call them my first mentors in my two business partners. And they were the ones who really, I guess, gave me the confidence and belief in myself to be able to take this leap as a mum of a 6-week-old baby with no experience and kind of go on this journey. And they must have seen something in me when they came to visit the hotel that day that made them think, actually, you know what, she can do this. And nobody had ever, I guess, had the belief or really shown an interest from that point of view before. So it had never really dawned on me that this was something I was able to do. So they were the ones that kind of my cheerleaders to be able to go, actually, you know what's stopping you? Why wouldn't you? You've got this brilliant idea. You've had some experience. You're going to go and get more experience. Let's give it a go. So that's kind of where that mentorship started as well, which was super lucky.
So did you pitch the idea to them, or how did the conversation come about?
Yeah, so a bit of a strange story, really. So they run a business called Your Golf Travel, and I was hosting a fam trip for some of their team on the Saturday night at Donington. They'd been playing the golf in the afternoon, and then we did some crazy kind of drinking games and stuff in the evening on the Saturday. And Ross Marshall, one of my business partners, said to me on the Saturday night, I'd really like a bit of a kind of a tour in the morning of the golf course. Would you be able to do that for me? And I was like, oh God, well, we're all here till midnight. We're all a bit drunk far too much. I was like, yeah, of course, no problem. So I think he wanted it at like 7:30 the next morning. So we kind of went out on the golf buggy the next morning. And it was really those conversations of me saying, look, I've got this brilliant idea. I've been working in the spa world now for a couple of years. I'm not really feeling or seeing too much competition in this space. I've got this idea. And he was like, well, actually, we've done something quite similar with golf. Golf and spa fit really nicely. We've got a couple of desks at the back of our office. Why don't you come and give it a go? Obviously, they were very busy with the golf. It was a booming business and still is. And I very much kind of came on and said, right, I'll focus on the spa. You guys do the golf. And here we are almost 20 years later.
It's incredible. And as you've gone through your journey thereafter, have you had conversations like that again that have led to breakthrough moments, or was that a one-off?
I think that's the massive one, but there have been a number of kind of moments, I guess, through the last 18 years that have driven a lot of my business choices and decisions. I believe in surrounding myself with the best people, and I'm very lucky in that the team at SpaBreaks are phenomenal. We moved from London down to Brighton back in 2017, and 11 of my team moved down with me. They completely relocated their lives out of London and came down to Brighton with me. Still got 6 of those people left. And those people, I guess, have helped me make decisions. I still receive every order and every purchase into my inbox every day so that I can still see what's being bought, what customers are saying, what they're asking for. I still see the complaints. I still sit on the sales floor so that I can hear the sales calls going on in the office. And ultimately, probably one of the biggest career or business decisions that I've made off the back of that was one Sunday morning is when I got a phone call from a customer back in 2011 now. They'd been to a spa. It was a Sunday morning. They'd clearly turned up at the spa for their treatment. The therapist was perhaps not feeling great from her night out the night before. And she saw that the lady had ticked that she'd had cancer on her consultation form. And the therapist turned around and said, I'm really sorry, I can't touch you. We can't do this treatment. You've had cancer. We can't treat you. So the woman on the end of the phone was sobbing, and she sobbed and she sobbed and she sobbed for about 30 minutes saying, I've been to hell and back in the last 12 months. I just needed a massage. I just needed to feel normal. And that conversation, I guess, really triggered a massive kind of, not a change in my direction, but certainly a huge kind of arm that's gone on to be a huge part of what we do at SpaBreaks. And that really is encouraging people with cancer back into spas, and the education of therapists and insurance companies working with key people within our industry to make sure that anyone living with or beyond cancer has access to well-being and relaxation in its own right. So that has been probably one of the biggest fundamental conversations that I've had.
It's an amazing element to have in your mission. And you mentioned at the start you were still trying to make it more accessible to people, a bit less elitist and a bit more accessible. And then that's the conversation that made it even more open up the accessibility as an arm.
Yeah. I think in the early days, cancer wasn't even in my mind back in 2008. Back in the early days, I was incensed by the fact that when I had my PR agency and I was going around the country, every spa I went into on a Tuesday afternoon or a Thursday morning was full of very beautiful women who clearly had the time and the money to be in the spas. But I didn't feel that there was a particularly kind of varied or welcoming feeling for anyone plus size, anyone of colour, anyone who, like I said, was having cancer, the deaf, the blind, anybody with a disability. It was just very, very beauty driven. And initially I guess my mission was to try to separate out spa and wellness and really make that part of a lifestyle and part of an essential part of our well-being, rather than something that was driven by, I felt at the time, hair and nails and beauty.
Probably easy to forget what the industry was like back then. Everyone now sort of takes wellness for granted, but back then that was a bit ahead of its time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that was the beauty of my vision, is that I foresaw and I wanted what's happened now, but it certainly wasn't happened back in 2008.
Interesting. And then on your journey after that period, how have other mentors, like you mentioned, Ross Marshall, how have other mentors come into your journey and helped you along the way?
So I've had loads of mentors in lots of different ways. And I think that's what's beautiful about the word mentor, because they can, I guess, come to you in lots of different formats and in lots of different parts of your life. So I've had personal mentors who really understand, I guess, my challenge around being a mum of 3 and a business person, and trying to juggle that and what comes from that, and the guilt and everything that comes with it, as well as trying to understand bringing up teenagers. I've got a nearly 18-year-old, a nearly 15-year-old and a 10-year-old, and the world is a pretty scary place right now for those individuals. So trying to So I've had my personal mentors, my girlfriends who have been there for me. I've got a couple of female friends who have done incredibly well in business, CFOs of big businesses who understand, I guess, what it's like to have to do both. Because unless you've done it, it is really difficult. It's really tough to understand how somebody needs to be on 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. It never stops. But then also being a mum never stops either. So that challenge was real. But then through the business side of things, I've been very lucky in that truly believe that you can achieve anything providing you can be kind and build relationships. And from the relationships that I've been able to build and kind of develop over the years, I've been able to spend time with some really incredible people. The spa and wellness industry in particular has a lot of incredibly strong women within it. And I've been very lucky to be able to spend time with the likes of Sue Harmsworth, Amanda Winwood, all of these incredible women who have created their own businesses with such moral and ethical kind of foundations below them that they totally get my journey, and they're able to, Amanda Winwood, for example, calls herself the Queen of Hugs, and she is just always there to kind of just pick you up if you're not feeling particularly good. But also from an education point of view, I work with a number of ladies within the education, a lady called Diane Hay, who I just find fascinating because all of these areas touch my business in so many different ways in the wider industry. And actually, if you don't learn from people and really understand how all of those pieces of the jigsaw fit together, it's very difficult to really be able to build and excel your business. So over the years, I've spent a lot of time with some pretty incredible women and guys within the industry who have just continued to inspire me to be better. And I guess inspire me to continue to make SpaBreaks bigger and better, because after 18 years, some people would say you get a bit bored and a bit staid. But actually, if you've always got something else to aim for and always something to kind of motivate you and inspire you, and there's always more to do, then it kind of keeps you fresh and keeps you motivated.
Now, I've heard you talk about the power of relationships and surrounding
Yeah.
yourself with the right people. But is there a practical way to get better at that? Is that something that comes naturally to you? You have the confidence to do it, or is there a practical way to improve at that?
I think I'm very lucky in that because I never had the educational kind of background, or it wasn't particularly academic, that I've never been able to rely on grades for anything. And therefore, I think if you haven't got the CV or the shiny CV, or you haven't been given that kind of privileged upbringing, and therefore it's almost been gifted to you a little bit, you've kind of got to scrap for it in other ways. And for me, it was certainly about, I learned very early on that if you can be really nice to people and genuinely mean it, actually people will do anything for you. People on the whole are really good. And people do want to support you. Not everybody does, but a lot of people do. And actually, if you can take people on a journey and really help them be part of something, I've found that that's definitely a benefit. Can it be learned? Yeah, absolutely. I think you can, there's lots of fantastic networking, mentoring programs around now, for example, that never existed back in 2008 for me. So I didn't have those, but certainly with all of the kind of the organisations and ideas and initiatives that are out there, actually you're better placed than ever to be able to go out there and build relationships for yourself.
And the sort of informal group you mentioned, the mums that are also CFOs, does that take a structured format? Do you meet on a regular basis or talk on a regular basis, or are it just people you can rely upon as and when?
No, so the lady in question was in my NCT group, actually. So she was also a mum who had a child 2 hours before my eldest. So I knew her even before my business journey had started, but she was already on her business journey and doing incredibly well. So as I've kind of come up through the ranks, I've had her as my kind of business mentor. She sits on as NED on boards, and she's worked with some incredible business people, and has the most incredible business mind. So she has been somebody who I chat to all the time. I'm godmother to her daughter. And we've both had pretty adverse lives at times, and we've both been through some pretty difficult things. So actually having the work connection plus the fact that we are both mums and it hasn't been a journey for either of us. Both of our babies used to cry, for example. So we'd go out for walks for like 3 hours at a time when they were screaming and just go away from the world, because we knew that we were still on our phones, still trying to work while having these screaming babies. So those two things brought us together, and she'll be a friend forever. So I was very lucky.
Did you say that was through NCT?
And through the NCT group.
It feels like you're a bit of a magnet for attracting people. Yeah.
I think it's just, I think if you radiate positivity and kindness, it generally comes back at you. I stand by that.
Awesome. And you yourself are now doing some mentoring as well. I know you did a bit for Virgin Startup. What's encouraging you to give back through mentoring?
Having real mentors is really important. It didn't exist when I started my business. And kind of the business women that I was looking up to are the Jo Malones of this world, who had the most phenomenal businesses. But they also probably had an army of staff behind them, kind of helping them on that journey. I had nothing and nobody. And I think it's really important for women and men out there starting businesses, whether you're kind of in your younger years or older, to have people that have done it before, that have done it from nothing, and that have really been able or can relate to you, or you can relate to them, and the challenges that they've had. It's a really lonely world. It's a challenging world. And at times it's not a very nice one. You generally don't ever switch off. There's always that sense of responsibility, as well as all the amazing other sides of it that a business brings. But actually, particularly for a working mum, there are some really bleak, pretty dark times that I just hope that being able to do these mentoring and having these conversations can really, I guess, allow people to realise that it can be done.
I guess it might be helpful to know what are some of those dark times and how did you navigate your way through?
Yeah, well, I guess COVID has to be kind of pretty much up there on the list. 23rd of March. I don't think I'll ever forget that night. We had 10,000 people travelling within the next 3 weeks, and I think from a business point of view, we had a 6-hour team call that night, and overnight, we had to flip our business entirely, from being a booking-driven, order-taking business online to a completely customer service-focused business for the next 6 months. The team, obviously, we used the furlough scheme. We had a skeleton team of between 6 and 12 at any time. But it was the darkest, hardest time, because I've run my business morally and ethically from the start. And it's really important to me that I do that. But unfortunately, I was having to make business decisions that weren't moral and weren't ethical, but they were for the survival of my own business and for the survival and the jobs of the people that have been with me for years. And that was really, really tough. I think having to look myself in the mirror every night and say, you've done stuff today that really doesn't make you very proud, was hard, particularly while homeschooling 3 children. I lost my father to Alzheimer's during COVID as well, so I wasn't able to say goodbye to him. So it was a really, really tough time. I saw a lot of people in business suffer immensely, and not being able to reach out to those people physically and be there as a friend was really hard, but also trying to battle to save my own business was really difficult. Thank God for gift vouchers is all I can say, because everybody thought this kind of 3-week thing was going to go away. So we still managed to turn over 10 million that year in gift voucher sales, just with people hoping and praying that at some point they would get out of their living room and go to a spa again. And we pivoted, we pivoted our business. I didn't furlough the tech team. So during that period of time where we were able to take a step back, reset a little bit, look at the things that we could be doing better. We used the time to create, to write the code to be able to redeem gift vouchers online, where before I had a team of 6 people doing that. So I could learn from that and have efficiencies coming out of it, so that, our aim and our kind of our mission as a team at that point was to come out the best we possibly could and to come out stronger than we went in. And that was through that 18 months really was the aim. We knew what we needed to do. We knew exactly how we were going to do it. And we were a very small and close team knit of people, and we just went and we did it. And 2021, 22, 23 and 24 have all been record years. So we certainly, I think, achieved that.
Amazing. That's incredible, rapid, practical pivot.
Crazy.
I think you said I saw a stat, something along the lines of like 92% or something of bookings were then done through the internet after COVID.
92%
Yeah.
of all of our business now, yeah.
Amazing.
And we had to make refunds, and we had to manage that customer satisfaction process, because obviously with the likes of Trustpilot and all of these kind of customer facing websites, I couldn't just not refund people. But I couldn't then also refund people, because if I did, I have no business left. So everybody wanted a refund, but I wasn't able to give refunds. I wasn't able to pay the hotels and the spas that I needed to pay at the times that needed to pay. So again, it comes back to relationships and building trust, and the fact that they had to, for a lot of the time, take my word for what I was saying, that I wasn't going to be able to pay them this week, but I would pay them by the end of the month, or I would pay them whenever I could. And that trust formed a huge part of, I hope, then going into the next chapter of SpaBreaks.com.
Awesome. Which it obviously has benefited coming out. And aside from the practical side of it, how did you emotionally navigate that period and the tough times that you go through as a founder? What do you do to look after yourself?
I would say probably I'm the one that's constantly neglected and left. And a bit of advice to all founders is try not to do that, because ultimately you can't pour from an empty cup. And I've heard that phrase so many times and ignored it, to the point where I got quite sick. I had 10 or 11 major back operations, completely ignored it, to a point where I've had to have my spine fused, because I wasn't listening to the doctors. I wasn't listening to the fact that I was slipping discs left, right and centre. I wasn't going to the gym. I wasn't keeping fit, because I was mum or I was businessman, and I couldn't be both, or I could be both, but I couldn't also look after myself. And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make. And that's fine when you're in your 30s, but unfortunately, when you approach your 50s, it's not quite the same anymore. And your body you only get one body. And I think once something's happened to your spine, and as a result, you then have something happen to your knee or your neck or whatever it is, and then the menopause starts to kick in, actually you realise that you really are not unbreakable. So for me, I've always had dogs. So I walk 6 kilometres every day with my dogs without fail. And that's the headspace that I need. I generally tend to go on my own, because it's the only time during the day that I'm on my own. I'm not mum. I try not to take my headphones so that I can't talk when I'm walking them. I connect to nature. So I believe I was brought up down in Devon by the sea. So I'm a big connector of birds, trees, greenery, the ocean. I try really hard to submerse myself in that every day. It's my only bit of release I get, but I do love it. I went to a PT for a year, which I loved, but I just can't fit that into my day with everything else that I've got going on at the moment. So I will come back to that. I've promised myself. But in the meantime, it is all about this kind of 6 kilometres every day, where I try to run a bit, I walk a bit. There's no pressure. I just listen to the trees and just allow myself that hour off.
That's awesome. I spoke to a founder psychologist once, and they said that 2 hours in nature per week can improve your well-being. That alone.
Totally believe it. I go to bed at 9:00 at night. So I go to bed early every day. I try to eat healthily, not all the time, but sometimes. And I love a can of Coke every day. That's my vice. I don't drink tea or coffee, but that's the thing that keeps me going.
And one other thing for well-being that we've heard from a few founders before is celebrating the small wins, which I know you mentioned as well. How do you celebrate the small wins?
You have to be really disciplined with it. And that's something else that COVID taught me. From 2008, when I started the business, to 2017, to 2020, obviously, when COVID hit, my business had grown exponentially year on year, every year. And not once had I really sat back and thought about it. I'd been listed number 2 in the Fast Track 100. We'd won multiple awards. I've won multiple awards as an individual business person. And not once had I ever sat back and gone, oh, well done, Abs. This is great. God, look at what you've achieved. Not once. COVID hit, and my God, did I realise that I'd completely taken it all for granted. So coming out of COVID, we try really hard now on a monthly weekly basis, however often it needs to be, to celebrate small wins, whether that's internally in the team, whether that's externally with things that we're doing. But I guess it's that kind of age-old problem with the Brits, isn't it? And we're not very good at kind of shouting about what we've done. And actually, you know what, I'm incredibly proud of what we've achieved and what the team are achieving and what we as an industry, I think, are achieving to ensure that people have access to well-being and that becomes part of their life. And I think that's something truly to be celebrated.
Absolutely. And to sort of round off our story, we started at the beginning, year one, quite an intense period, but you still managed to hit 250,000 in your first 6 months. Where's the business at today?
So 2024 was a record-breaking year for us. We turned over in excess of 36 million. Most profitable year as well, which is great. So we have some pretty aggressive sales targets for the next 3 years that take us up in excess of 50 mil. I think to achieve that would be absolutely mind-blowing. The fact that we're at the numbers that we are already just blows my mind. We still only do UK. We're not overseas yet. There's just a whole host of things that we can do. Tech plays a big part of what we're doing now. So we're trying to create a seamless journey for all of our customers. So from the minute they come to the site to the minute they kind of arrive at the hotel, this kind of online tech journey, while also continuing to put customer at the heart of everything we do. You know, I believe that as well-being evolves and that we see it go into a whole different dimension of AI and technology, it's really important that we keep that physical, emotional connection with well-being. You know, I still believe to this day that there are very few environments that you can go into that reignite all your senses. So actually with that phone in your locker, your smell, your touch, your vision, hearing, everything is kind of reignited because you're away from that screen. You're not scrolling. You are reconnected, and we have to keep hold of that, because I think in the world as we go through with everything being virtual, everything being online, everything being on a screen, there is very little connection with anything anymore. And going back to my point about relationships and connections and making sure that things are real, that is incredibly important. And I see it in our young people, and it's just not there. And we have to make sure that that remains part of our well-being, because it's a big part of it.
Awesome. And am I right? I think I saw a clip on LinkedIn that your son came into work experience
He
back at the
did,
company. So it's a
yeah.
proper full
Yeah,
circle.
he did. So he's doing business management at college. He also struggles academically with dyslexia. And so I've kind of been able to tap into the neurodiverse challenges of educational systems for our youth, and seen firsthand that actually it's really tough, really, really tough. So I'm really delighted that there are T-levels, different courses out there for people who aren't necessarily going to follow the A-level and university route, which I probably shouldn't have either. And actually he's doing his work placement. He came in to us for a couple of days, which is great, and starts a year-long placement at Donington Valley, which is where I started
That's
25
amazing.
years ago. So he starts tomorrow. So it's really exciting. Yeah, great to see.
Wow. And then, so just as a sort of parting question, I guess for aspiring founders that maybe are at the start of their journey, maybe don't come from a particularly privileged background, or maybe have neurodiversity as an area that they want to explore, what would you say to them for starting a business?
So get a great idea, believe in that idea, believe in yourself, surround yourself, even if it's just with a couple of people that equally believe in your idea, and just keep going. I think with with the world in the neurodiversity kind of challenges that we've got, creativity and people with personality and drive are going to be more important than ever. And providing you've got this idea, you've got people behind you to support you and back you when things get tough, there is nothing that we can't achieve. The world, there's never been so much support and so much kind of ability out there to be able to start businesses and have ideas. Sadly, economically, financially, things are tough, and probably much tougher than they've ever been for people starting businesses. But there's also other ways, and kind of the Virgin Startup is a great, example of these brilliant communities that exist. Lean on communities, lean on ideas. Social media, although has its kind of disadvantages in this world, could also be brilliant. So there's lots of tools out there. Go and make the most of them, and just truly believe, look yourself in the mirror every night and tell yourself that you're doing a good job, because it's really important that you can do that.
Awesome. It's incredible to hear the story. Love the accessibility angle. And I'm sure many people find it inspiring just how far you've come from where you started. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Lovely to talk to you.